Hello, dear friends. This is 30 Days of Good News with the Master, day 28. And we are here at the dawn of a new day, December 31st, the last day of 2016. And you may be rejoicing because of a new year. And one is completing itself, a new one is opening up. Many people think that New Year is actually a fictitious thing. No, it's not. Talk to astronomers and you know, it's when we complete one full turn around the sun. It's a big deal. It is a big deal. It's not something that we create in our minds. It's an actual physical completion that also has impact in our spiritual and psychological beings. And the dawn of a new day is also the new beginning, the renewal. And when we are in the darkest hour, but also approaching the new sunrise, we are also here every midnight for 30 days in a row to pay tribute to the first Christians who made efforts to get out of their comfort zone and cherish these teachings, running away from persecutions in the catacombs in the middle of the night. And we are exercising this. It's not simple, it's not easy, but here we are. Hello, Ana Luisa, and Alturi, and Felipe, Adilson, Angelita, Valéria, and Sunshine, Jussara. Love the happy faces. Hey, Sunshine, I'm grateful to be here with you too. Love the hearts. Hello, Felicia. Happy and blessed morning. You're right. Right? And the flowers too. Flowers are signature of God. Right? As we learned from Joana de Angelis through Divaldo Franco. Hello, Solange and Rosemary. Friends, how are you feeling? This is the last day of the year. Hello, dear Julija. You are ahead of us in this transition to the new year, right? You're closer to the new year than we are. Hello, Rihanna. And friends, Tanya. Here we are together. New chapter. The book Good News, Boa Nova in Portuguese, by the Spirit author Humberto de Campos, through the medium Chico Xavier, already in English, but awaiting its publication by the Brazilian Spiritist Federation. We were told by the Spirit Mentor soon after the elections of the results, the outcome, November 9th, of the United States elections, that we should share the teachings that need to calibrate ourselves so we can help instead of being negative, instead of being defeated by frustrations. Let us work to help those who are discouraged and tell them that there's no reason to be discouraged. This book, Boa Nova, was published in 1940, a year in the middle of the Second World War. Dramatic, but it was also a way for the good spirits to tell us, don't be discouraged, because the captain of the ship knows what's happening. Let us do our part and trust and do what Jesus taught us. Always trust the good in all circumstances, right? Hello, Raquel and Katia. Grateful friends for having you here too. Hello, Ada. All right, ready. What is the title? Chapter 28. And remember, in this study session, we're acquiring new therapeutic tools for the ultimate inner journey. We're not here as scholars of the New Testament. We're not here as historians of the New Testament. It's very important to do that, but we don't have expertise. I don't have expertise to do this, so we're going to focus on the ultimate purpose of this book, which is consolation. which is to renew our souls. The therapeutic features are the best. We have been studying and researching this book for the last 4 years or more, and it's phenomenal. When we bridge it up with neuropsychology, you can tell a lot about the nonverbal lessons of the master in this book. Hello, João Bosco and Adilson. Chapter 28, The Good Thief. So interesting, huh? Only Spiritism could begin a chapter by titling Good Thief. I say this because thief by nature is a bad thing, right? You're stealing, robbing people. But then, a new concept. What is it? Spiritism always has a new concept, a new definition for everything. And here we're going to learn. It's also about us. So Humberto de Campos begins the chapter by describing a few days prior to his arrest, the disciples, the apostles, were having mundane discussions. What? Mundane discussions? By the way, they are human beings on the earth. Yes. So don't be shy when you have mundane conversations. I'm saying we should trim it out. But if the disciples, the apostles, had them, don't feel ashamed. Don't feel guilty. Be kind to yourself. Self-compassion. And say, I'm gonna work on this. Okay? Self-compassion. It's not by chance that Humberto de Campos is describing this to us. He is grounding us, because often we think about the discipleship as something that is in a monastery, out of this world, always right, without mistakes, without failures. My friends, if God made us perfectible, we're perfectible in process of the blossoming of our seeds, the divine seeds. He gave us free will to allow us to make choices. Why are we gonna punish ourselves when we make choices that are not appropriate? We can't, because we're divine beings. We need to learn to stop self-sabotage, to stop self-punishment, because God, the sole power of the universe, doesn't punish us, only educates us. Monday discussions, and they were commenting about faith and its problems, as if faith is a problem, but for them it is. They were talking about things in a way, trying hastily to force a solution. And that's how we are when we are at this level of discipleship. In our naivety, we discuss thinking that we have the ultimate solution for the problems of the soul. But you know, time will tell us that humility is always the best. We don't know until we get there, and we don't need to pass on recipes because we're still discovering them for ourselves. We just share, but we don't know. We don't need to be hastily forcing solutions, right? Hello, Angela. Long time no see you. So he describes to us some of the conversations of the disciples at the time, just so we have a feeling about it. Project in your mental field the scenes and the dialogue, so we feel it more, the vividness of these moments. Levi had tormented thoughts regarding it. Can you believe it? This is the disciple of Jesus, that close physically to him as well, but still experiencing that inner growth. Tormenting thoughts. What do you do when you have tormenting thoughts? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel you are not progressing? Don't. It's part of the learning. It's part of the learning journey. He asked, how would such virtue be? In which way can I keep it in touch, intact in my heart? I am sure that only a cultivated person is able to know the whole extent of faith. You see, the illusions of the discipleship. And James, who was the brother, he said, not so much. I believe that our will is enough for the trust in God to be alive inside of us. And then one of the sons of Zebedee, maybe John, maybe James. But is faith a virtue only for those that wish to have it? Questions that we may be asking. So now, Humberto de Campos is kindly showing to us that in this journey of the inner growth in the Christ consciousness, we go through similar questions. It wasn't different with the ones that were there day in, day out with the Master. The physical presence of the Master didn't change in that respect, because the Master allows the disciples to go through the learning in their own time. As if distanced from these clashes of words, you see, Jesus seemed to meditate in a corner. Remember, every chapter we read, the disciples are discussing heated arguments sometimes. And Jesus, what is he doing? Giving us a nonverbal lesson. He's not entering the battlefield of argumentations. Teaching us a lesson. At a certain moment, he was asked to resolve their dilemmas, to which he softly replied, let's focus on this, the things that are not spoken, the non-verbal language, because they contain true vibratory imprinting of what we need to learn. In this book, we learn about the whole Jesus, the holistic one. It's not one of words and deeds, but one that vibrates actions, words, thoughts, feelings, whole approach and attitude, coherence, complete coherence. He's congruent, as science says. His facial expression, his total emotional body language goes hand in hand with thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. So interesting, in this holiday season, we may be meeting several people. How often we're facing this incongruency of when we show one thing, but deep inside we're feeling something else. We want to do a third thing, and we're thinking a fourth thing, etc., etc. Isn't that interesting? We're very splitted. That's why we stress ourselves so much, because we're not mindful. We're not congruent. Body, mind, spirit, perispirit, physical body. Emotional body language, words, and feelings, thoughts, and actions. No wonder Mentor Joseph, in the year 2002, when we were in a mediumistic meeting at the Spirit Side of Baltimore, he recommended that we strive for coherence. Strive for the alignment of thoughts and words, feelings and actions. And Jesus kindly, he's asked, you see, another thing we need to learn. Hello, elder. Hello, in the last day of the year we're together. That's beautiful. Now, Jesus, as a good master, he's teaching us a lesson. You may not be willing to enter a mundane conversation, but if people ask you to help out, you go and serve. And how do we serve? Not feeling the emotional contagion. He didn't enter the field of their agitation, argumentation. Humberto de Campos is revealing to us that Jesus didn't react. He took action. So how did he approach the hasteness of their ways of finding solutions to the problem of faith? How did they do it? How did he do it? Softly. Imagine, let's visualize so our very spiritual brain can imprint the image. He softly replied, "Hello, Supermom Lisdelia." He softly replied. Let us listen. Last day of the year, December 31st, a lesson in faith. We're entering a new year. We don't know what is ahead, but Jesus is talking about faith. And he says, faith, softly, faith especially belongs to those who work and trust. Something new. It's not only about trusting, it's about working. To have faith in one's heart is to always be ready for God. Whoa, he gives us the mechanism. We need to be ready for God, irrespective of a healthy or sick body, the successes or misfortunes of the material life, which have no meaning. So there's no such thing like, but I'm sick, but I have financial problems, but this, but that. The faithful soul works trustfully in the Father's designs. The Father can give us the goods, take them away, or substitute them at the appropriate time. The faithful individual always walks with serenity and love along the paths through which the generous hand of the Lord wishes to take them. We're entering soon a new year, and people are like, oh my gosh. And I'm not saying this because sometimes I feel the same. Like, oh my gosh, I read the news and I'm like, But then we are reminded, wait up. The faithful individual always walks with serenity and love along the paths through which the generous hand of the Lord wishes to take them. If you're living in the United States of America, you're the first one to be invited for this transition of governments to support with serenity and love. What can we do? If we have faith in our hearts, faith in God, because God is the only one that rules. No president in this universe actually rules. God rules. Remember Jesus said that once? And if you go read the chapter in the Gospel According to Spiritism that talks about give Caesar what is Caesar's and God what is God's, we learn God is the only power. People may think they have power, but that's an illusion. Illusion. Because deep inside, we're only allowed to make choices, and it's not an absolute free will. Because we're co-creators. We don't start anything from scratch. So don't be afraid. Every single leader in the universe has a divine connection. Believe it or not. Even dictators. You think they don't have people who love them? They do. In both realms of life. We need to open our hearts, because if you have faith, we need to work and trust in God, be ready to serve, and if you are not in the United States, you can also team up and help out in this transition in the 2017 year, trusting and praying for the government that is going to take over so the whole world can have a good experience. And I don't say good in the sense of easy, but good in terms of learning. Okay? So let us... But then Levi... Yeah, you see, when we're together, it's much easier, right? Hello, Rudy. Yes, good news. We begin 2017 with good news. Replies Levi with a respectful attitude. But Master, how can we discern God's will in what happens to us? Aha! That's a question we've been asking as well. I've been observing a large number of criminals who attribute to providence their criminal acts, and a legion of idle people who classify laziness as something fated to happen by divine providence. Still happens to date, right? Aside from knowing God's will, from his own laws and his prophets through wise advice and the natural inclinations to the good, God's will also manifests itself in every moment of our lives. You see, we're talking about the balance, individual free will and God's will. It's bittersweet. It either grants us sweetness or takes it away from us in order for each of us to reap the most luminous experience along the thorniest path. Hello, Felipe. Oh, friend, you're so generous. Thank you for being here with us, Felipe. Practicing the good that is determined and following its sacred roadmap even in the face of the small sinuations on the road we must travel upon. Do you remember when Chico Xavier, he was still a young man, and his father wanted so much for him to experience, that manhood. So he brought him to the prostitution, to the house of prostitutes. And what did Chico Xavier do? Exactly what Jesus is saying. He was not a spiritist yet, but he was already faithful to God. He saw in the women sisters before God. And when his father noticed, he was praying with them. Friend, every day, Mentor Joseph is asking us, Vanessa, look around and every person you meet, repeat to yourself, child of God, that person is a child of God, like myself, and deserves a new experience. Every person I meet is a child of God. I can't be indifferent to their needs. I can't undermine their needs as well. I need to acknowledge their divine essence. We're no different. But Thomas, Thomas, so unique in his doubts. He said, but I believe that this exceptional quality of which you speak should be an attribute of the more cultivated spirit, because the inner man cannot foresee the acquisition of similar resources. Do you also think that those, like Thomas, many of us think that those who have true faith are people who are more advanced, that people who are simpler in the dealing with faith, they are not able to actually work with it. The Master looked at the apostle with love. That's how Jesus looks at us. Observe serenity, softness, love, and he clarified. See, the Master Humberto de Campos is presenting to us is different from everything we've ever heard in our lives. because he's never like angry. Never heard of Jesus being angry. Never heard of Jesus being furious. He was firm, very energetic, but loving. A balance that we're yet to learn. But we need to visualize it in order to imprint the new pattern in our paraspiritual brain, the mind, and then create a physical pathway to manifest it. That's how it happens. So the more we observe, the better it is. You know, science shows to us that children, for example, who are good observers, they learn faster. So we need to teach our children, before you do anything, observe. But we need to teach them by our own exemplification. What do you do when you come to a gathering? Do you already like jump in and blah, 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 blah? Or you wait, listen, observe? The Master looked at the Apostle with love. With love. And what does he say? He clarifies. He brings light to that question, to that doubt. Remember St. Francis of Assisi? And Jesus is the role model. Because whenever there is doubt, he brings light. The faith, clarification. What a beautiful, poetic wording Umberto de Campos brings to us, because he's talking about faith, he's clarifying it, shedding light on the doubts, dissipating the doubts. So coherent. Jesus then clarifies, every individual of faith will, now or later, be the beloved brother of wisdom and feeling. Ha ha. Again and again, he's reporting to feelings. However, such qualities will always belong to the child who is loyal to the Father in heaven. So we will gain wisdom and mastery of sentiments when we are loyal to God. What is to be loyal to God? I'll give an example. Not because I know, but I've been learning too. I asked Mentor Joseph, what is it? And he says, Vanessa, if you are asked to clean the floor by your boss, let's say figuratively, that's not my job, but let's say if it is, he says, when you're loyal to God, you fulfill the task respecting your boss, no matter if he's right or wrong, knowing that your action, the fulfillment of that duty, is ultimately the fulfillment of a divine duty. If we are asked to do anything in this life, in the different roles we have, whether a mother, father, professionals, and people who coordinate communities, or in our family relationships, when we treat every single duty and relationship as something sacred, we're being loyal to God. That's the practical understanding of what it is to be loyal to God. We're loyal to God when we fulfill duties and when we care for relationships, treating duties and relationships as sacred opportunities to fulfill God's will. Complaining disappears, and we may be tired, because we're humans, but we will rejoice. And as Jesus recommended, sacrifice with joy. Sacrifice the ego. That's what he meant. Sacrifice the ego. Not the bird that is flying, but the ego that wants something different, wants something easier, And God is saying, I trust you, and I trust in you. I'd like you to take care of this person, and I trust that you're the best person to do this. And you say, I don't understand how, but I will do it. I'll make an effort. And through effort and repetition, we master it. That's what Jesus is telling us. The apostle smiled and considered, but who in this world will have such perfect loyalty? Yeah, good question, Thomas. Well, Jesus, now the Christ, replied with kindness, thank you, because it's really, really hard. He's kind to us. When Thomas is saying, it's so hard, he's kindly saying, yeah, nobody can judge at all, Christ replies, other than the definitive criteria coming from God. So you and I cannot tell if others are doing it, are being loyal to God, but we can strive to do it. Only God can judge. Thank God, only God can judge. Only God can judge. Thank God, only God can judge. People may attempt, but it's never valid. People's judgment is never valid. They can say whatever, right? They judged Christ. It didn't work. He's out of the cross. He's free, powerful, loving everybody. They tried, it didn't work, right? People tried to do the same with Socrates and Gandhi, and it didn't work. It didn't work. They tried to do with the Dalai Lama, and to date it still happens. The Chinese government and against it, and the Chinese people against him, but he's free and he's working, etc. The judgment is an attempt to be God. When I judge somebody, I'm failing because I'm trying to be God, but I cannot be God. That's why the judgmental nature inside of us is a big mistake. It never works. No matter if we think we're so right that our sentencing of people inside of us and to our group say, no, that person, don't go there. We've never heard Jesus saying, don't talk to this person, don't do this, don't mingle with them, right? He advised us to work helping those who are sick. He said, don't waste your time like the Pharisees. That's it. Hello, Gustavo. So, Jesus says, replied the Christ with kindness. But if such achievement of the souls is not common to those of limited knowledge or in common positions, it's very possible that we would find it in the exhausted hearts of the unhappy and marginalized of the world. Can you believe it? He's saying that those who are exhausted, unhappy, and marginalized, they are the ones that potentially will reach this perfect loyalty with God. Oh, Jesus Christ, you are really saving us from our ignorance. And Thomas smiled like we're smiling. This is revolutionary. Due to his pragmatic skepticism, he was disappointed though. Soon the small community dispersed as the dark shroud of the night was coming along. And then what happened next? Quite interesting. Now we are in a second moment of this chapter. So this was few days before the arrest, with the disciples discussing faith. Now Humberto de Campos opens another scenario at the crucifixion. Jesus at the cross, By the way, did you know that crucifixion is something that was common in the past as a form of capital punishment that not only wanted to kill the person but also humiliate the person? Usually they were naked. Usually many torturous things were done to those who were crucified. And did you know that crucifixion is a method that is still used to date on the earth in some parts of the earth? For example, the ISIS, they use crucifixion to punish their enemies. Jesus was sentenced with a capital punishment, but humiliation was the goal. And that's what happens to whomever wants to follow Jesus. Those who don't understand him want to humiliate the true disciples and apostles of Jesus. Sometimes humiliate with diseases. Many people don't understand when Chico Xavier got sick. Even John of God. John of God got sick, had cancer. And the reporter in Brazil asked him, well, you heal many people, but when it comes to you, you go to the doctors? And he replied, well, does the barber cut his own hair? Chico Xavier as well. He didn't go after healing mediums. He treated himself also with traditional medicine, but we know that they also handled it with the inner renewal tools as well. Humiliation is a mechanism to put us down, but instead of being humiliated, we have a choice. Humbling ourselves, which is different. When we have God in our hearts, we don't feel humiliated. We actually are invited to feel humble, so we are humbled by the experience of the greatness of life and our temporary smallness, though unique, right? Something to think about. Instead of feeling humiliated, we humble ourselves. That's why Jesus never felt humiliated at the cross. He never did. Why? Because he was so loyal to God that there, in front of that limitation that was imposed for the benefit of all, in that sacrifice, he was invited to humble himself before the greatness of God. Men were thinking that they were humiliating, but he never took it. He never took that offense. He actually humbled himself before the greatness of life. In the somber hours of the cross, Thomas, disguised in different clothing, followed the courageous Messiah step by step. Strange introspections arose within the spirit of Thomas. His worldly reasoning did not provide the elements for the understanding about the whole truth. Where was that loving and kind God in whom he rested his hopes? Isn't that how you feel when you're challenged by life? Like, how come? I'm trying my best and this is what I experience? Does his love only have a cross to offer to Christ Jesus, his beloved Son? For what reason didn't the horizons open so that legions of angels could save the beloved Master from the crime of the unconscious and furious crowd? What providence was this that did not manifest itself in the opportune moment? For 3 consecutive years, we have believed that God had all the power upon the world. Interesting enough, it's like when you would take a course. And I've read today in the New York Times about an evangelical man in the United States who was really modeling as a pastor. And he had a bike accident which made him experience the near-death experience. And when he came back, he lost his faith. His wife, who doubted the Christian values, she was relieved. She said, you know, finally we're going to be coherent, because she felt there wasn't much coherence. So it's not about losing faith. It's about actually never we're not judging, but we're saying, is it 3 years in Thomas' life? He did learn it. Jesus said faith is about work and trust. It's not only trust. For now, Thomas was just trusting. We missed one part of it, work. So he could not therefore explain how he could tolerate such a bloody spectacle of his envoy. How could someone so loving and affectionate be led to the infamous cross under insults and brickbats? Was then the award for Christ a mountain of desolation reserved for criminals? Remember, crucifixion was not only about the capital punishment, but humiliation. Not only torturing the body, but also allowing the public to put the person down throughout the crucifixion. Sometimes people would be there attached to the cross for days until the physical body was dead. And it still happens in some parts of the earth. Yeah. Anxious, the apostle contemplated those hands that had sown goodness and love, now attached to the cross like two bloody flowers. The forehead crowned by thorns, the chest trembled, breathing fast. His shoulders, hello Rosa, his shoulders must have been tapped on and made sore. Was it worth to have spread among people so many graces from heaven? And this is the same question that many people ask today. If you attempt to do something good, whether small or big, and when problems happen in your life, people say, see, why am I going to attempt to do this? If that person did this and they're going through this, why am I going to go through this myself? Same. We are still cultivating that old faithless mentality. The malefactor that robbed the neighbor was now, in his view, the owner of the most lasting compensations. Thomas felt as if he were drowning. And that's how we feel when we are lacking the foundation of faith. Drowning, anxious. Signs of the need to work on our faith. Let's not forget, Jesus said, faith is a bifold opportunity. We need to work and trust. Not only trust, work. He wished to meet with some of the companions to exchange impressions, but he didn't see anybody. He looked around to see if any of those who helped the Messiah were watching his humiliating martyrdom. Remember the day they were so happy with his holy presence. He found no one. The lepers that had regained the precious gift of health, the blind that were able to see, the disabled were now absent. Everybody. They ran away from the testimony. Was it worse to practice the good? Are we like this? Stop. We need to stop. This is the good news today. Faith is about, let me read from the Master's words. Faith especially belongs to those who work and trust. Now, is it worth to practice the good? Do we still ask these questions? Is it worth to practice the good? When you see people who work hard for the benefit of others, and you see them being challenged financially, family-wise, socially speaking, etc., do you think, oh, is it really worth it doing the good? Because look at the people who do the good. That happened to Chico Xavier too. He was in a place meeting people, and then this man who knew him since childhood went to the same school. He came to him and said, Chico, are you married? No. Do you have children? No. Do you have grandchildren? No. Do you own a company? No. Do you have a car? No. Do you have a house? Not necessarily. You see, Chico, you do all that you do, but you don't have anything in this world. But look at me. Believe it or not, this man turned to Chico and said exactly that. He said, but look at me. I don't do what you do, but I have a wonderful wife, good health. I have a car and a company, children, grandchildren. I don't understand why you do what you do. Is it worthwhile? Chico Xavier was distraught. He actually talked to Emmanuel about this. And Emmanuel kindly, in a parable, like a tale, he was telling Chico, Chico, your children are the books, because these books are giving life to generations to come. And he was explaining, and he was right, Emmanuel, because through these books, here we are together at midnight. 10 minutes to 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and different times around the world. But here we are. What about the man who talked to Chico? He thought he was superior. He thought it was not worthwhile being good. Where is he? What is his name? I don't know. You probably don't know either. It doesn't matter. So do we know the answer? Thomas is asking, was it worth to practice the good? What is the answer? And you're right, Rosa. Chico had more than we have, but we need to have eyes to see it. Hello, Rita Di Cassia. Now, immersed in painful and somber thoughts, the apostle, you see, when we are faithless, we feel pain, we have torturous thoughts, we are anxious. The apostle allowed himself to be absorbed by strange questions. He heard laughter filled with irony around the cross. The master, however, kept an unsurpassed serene face. He is the ultimate model for us. Throughout the whole thing, he maintained serenity. Happy New Year! Every now and then he looked over the multitudes, hoping to discover a familiar face. And then Umberto de Campos described everything that was happening. And he said, Thomas thought he could hear the unforgettable cries of the torturous thorns, while the arrows and brutal accusations were crossing the air. Such a humiliating capital punishment. He fixated his eyes on the two malefactors that the justice of the world had condemned to the ultimate punishment. Thomas approached the cross and noticed that the Messiah had a loving gaze towards them, just like in the more tranquil times. He saw that the bloody sweat running down Jesus' venerable face was mixed with the red from the painful and life source. With that unforgettable gaze, Jesus showed him the open source, the signs of the sacrifice. showing Thomas. Painful emotion dominated the sensible soul of the apostle. Misty-eyed, he remembered the radiant days along the Tiberias. The simplest scenes of the apostolate resurfaced in his imagination. Suddenly, he recalled the afternoon in which they were discussing the problem of faith that we just described. And it seemed that he could still hear the elucidations of the Master with respect to cultivating perfect loyalty to God. Immersed in those introspections, who was more faithful to the Father than Jesus? However, his reward was the cross of the martyrdom. Absorbed in singular thoughts, the apostle observed that the Messiah was looking at one of the thieves, who looked back at him tenderly. Aha! Non-verbal lessons. Jesus was paying attention to Thomas. Like a good educator, he's paying attention to the whole classroom, not missing one single student. Throughout this book, we observe that Jesus was multitasking in his loving educational approach. He was there paying attention, teaching Thomas, while caring also for the thieves that were being punished with him. Hello, Norma. And Jesus was looking at one of the thieves, and the thief had a tender look at Jesus. At that moment, Thomas noticed that the weak voice of the miscreant addressed the Master in a tone of profound sincerity. Profound sincerity. Lord, remember me when you enter your kingdom. The apostle noticed that Jesus directed to him then a loving gaze, while Thomas' ears received the echo of Jesus' soft and clarifying word. And he was not soft because physically he was almost dying, because that was his attitude too. Loving gaze, serenity, still caring. He didn't judge the thief. He doesn't judge because he says only God can judge. Who are we to judge? In previous lives, we may have done worse than the people whom we encounter today. Are you shocked about the president-elect's attitude? What if in the past we did much worse? We don't recall. Many people don't want to take certain positions of leadership in politics because they know in previous lives they had made a big mistake and they're afraid of failing again. We cannot point fingers. We cannot cast stones. Maybe we did worse. Psychology says that often we reproach in others what we still reproach inside of us. And Spiritism will complement, saying it's likely that what we're reproaching in others, projecting the shame and the guilt onto others, something that we've done in the past. No casting of stones. See, Thomas, said Jesus, while all men of the law did not comprehend me, my own apostles abandoned me. I find loyal trust in the heart of a thief. What a master. What a master. He's not resentful. And he's still teaching. He's still teaching us that it doesn't matter how long you have gone wrong, or how long we have studied the truth. We will only be faithful to God when we work on our trust in God. It's not a given. Somebody may come today at a Spiritist Center and start the study and be miles away, ahead of us. And we cannot tell them, how come? I've been here for 10 years and now you show up and you're already doing this, that, and the other. Faith and loyalty to God is not about numbers. It's not about time. It's about work and trust. To wrap up this beautiful chapter, the good news. Friends, how do you feel? We're about to turn to a new year. And Jesus is teaching us about the active faith. Work and trust. It's not enough to trust in God. We need to work on it. Be loyal. Be ready for God. And He's saying to us clearly that it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. If you're ready for God, you may be the worker of the last hour. You're going to get the same salary as somebody who has done it from hour number 1. So in Spiritism or any other thing, we don't have a curriculum saying, I've done all of this, so I'm better than those who are just beginning. No. Anybody is entitled to be ready for God, to be loyal to God. Look at Paul. Look at Stephen. Peter got it all. He allowed Stephen to go through, though he didn't meet the Master. He was the first person to heal and to teach. And later, Paul became the one. He didn't even meet Jesus personally. And I say this quote unquote because it's exactly the terms. We know that we're all under the umbrella of His care. But we say in that life, in that incarnation, He didn't until the very spiritual appearance. Right? The encounter in Damascus. And nobody told him, oh, you can't because you persecuted. Now you can't. And Jesus invested on him to tell us. At the end of the book, we learned it. That Jesus wanted that both those who were working from the first hour and the workers of the last hour be together. No matter if we made mistakes. Do you love Jesus more today than yesterday? I do too. Never met a master like this. I remember at the University of Maryland, in a faculty meeting, some of my colleagues were discussing cases of students, and I remember a colleague, merciless, saying, I think we should fail them so they stop this career. They're not going to be able to graduate well. And then I said, look, we're talking about lives. We're not talking about numbers and grades. You don't know how much these students strive to be here. If they're going through a tough phase in their lives, we need to be merciful. And Jesus is the master of mercy in our lives. He looks at the thief and says, I find loyal trust in the heart of a thief. Unconditional love. Right, Adilson? Right. Restlessly, the Apostle Thomas meditated hours on end on the lesson he received. He contemplated the painful spectacle until the moment that the Master was removed from the cross of the ultimate agony. He started then to understand the profound essence of his mortal teachings. You see, he started. Remember, faith is about work and trust. He started 3 years with Jesus, and he only connected after the passing of Jesus. Yes, may Jesus be in our hearts in these moments of difficulty, Rita Di Cassia is saying, showing us the good way to be loving more and to be better. Thank you, Rita. And as if his spirit were transported to the top of a high mount, it seemed that Thomas was observing the heaviness of the human march. There were, he says here, conspicuous men of the law holding the divine books, doctors infatuated with pride walking tall. Men of solid beliefs composed the scene showing their contentment. Vain and fanatic women equally revealed their beloved titles. Next came the ones who were directly benefited by the Divine Master. It was a legion of those who were lifted from their physical misery and their moral ruin. They were the lepers of Jerusalem, the blind of Capernaum, the sick of Sidon, the apparently more sincere followers, parading side by side with the disciples, ashamed and wavering in the ultimate hour. Taken by livid emotion, Thomas started to cry inwardly. It was then that he felt he was hearing delicate and almost imperceptible steps without being able. See, Jesus always approaches subtly. He doesn't impose himself. Without being able to explain what was happening, he discerned by his side the unforgettable figure of the Master, who put his light and friendly hands on his tormented forehead. Let us feel it, shall we? Feeling Jesus now. Like Thomas, Jesus putting his light and friendly hands on our tormented forehead, repeating to his heart the words that he had directed to him at the cross. The Master said, "See, Thomas, while all men of the law did not comprehend me, my own apostles abandoned me. I find low trust in the heart of a thief." Invitation for the new year. Let us be ready for God. Loyal, faithful, work and trust. Feeling the Master throughout 2017. Touching our forehead, renewing our thoughts, and inviting us to our readiness to God. Let us feel it and embrace the single opportunity of this reincarnation, because we have finally met the Christ in our lives. Share the good news, because they're good and they bring us joy. Friends, tomorrow, January 1st, 12:01, we're going to be here. And day one, a message that is immortal. The 500 of Galilee, a message for humanity throughout its generations. Big hug of gratitude. Have a wonderful night or day, and God providing, we'll be together tomorrow.